Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Adult Chair. I am Michelle Chalfant. Today, I am chatting with you about acceptance. There is actually great power in acceptance. We typically live with resistance to accepting the things that we do not want to accept, but once we do, wow, our lives can change. And I'm going to talk to you about how to do that. So the power of acceptance is coming your way in one moment. But first, you can find out more about the show at theadultchair.com. You can join the conversation on Facebook or Instagram or Pinterest. And of course, make sure to join the Adult Chair closed group on Facebook. It's a beautiful place to come and join the conversations that we have in there about the Adult Chair. So if you have questions or comments or want to learn more, that is the place to be on the internet. It's our private group. Okay, I've got 3 big announcements for you guys. Number 1, the journaling challenge has not only begun, it started on November 1st. It's going so well. I am reading the comments in the closed group on Facebook, and I have been brought to tears, of course, many times. And I just am so thrilled with the transformation that's already happened with people in such a short amount of time. So if you'd still like to join us for the journaling challenge, you can. You just join at theadultchair.com/journal, and you can sign up and join us for the rest of the month. So please come join us. We'd love to have you as part of this community of people. Number 2, I have put another workshop on the calendar, and it is going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina on January 26th and 27th. I could not be happier to be back in Charlotte. So please come join us if you're interested. And if you'd like to learn more about that class, that weekend workshop, it is at theadultchair.com/workshop. And for the month of November, I am gifting everybody $100 off the price of the workshop. So if you're interested in coming, you better get on it, people. Come join us, but join in November because the $100 discount will go away on December 1st. So hurry up and join us. Okay. This is the most important thing I want to share with you guys. It's my birthday. Actually, it's my birthday on November 9th, and you're going to be listening to this on November 8th. But it is my birthday on November 9th. And as you all know, I love doing what I do. I love my job. I love the podcast. I love the guided meditations. I've loved putting the journaling challenge together, and I do all of that for free because I love what I do and I love you all. So what people have said to me many times, I wish I could give something back. So here's what you guys can do. And I asked this last year as well. There are 2 things. Number 1, I would love to have you share the show, even just with one person. That is just would mean the world to me. I love that. I love to spread the Adult Chair message because I hear so much about how it's transforming people. And I have to say, it's completely surreal for me that this model has really traveled around the world and it's helping so many people. And I love to help people. So please share the show with one person. And number 2, a review would be fantastic. So if you just go to my website, theadultchair.com, and you click on the podcast tab, you're taken to the podcast page, and on the right-hand column, it says leave a review. If you could leave a review for me, that would be the best ever. Because what happens is when you leave a review, it helps other people to find the show so they can also transform and really learn all about the Adult Chair. So I would love it if you guys would help me there. So thank you in advance. Okay, moving on to the power of acceptance. Boy, I hear all kinds of things from people, whether it be clients, family, friends, you name it. These kinds of things come in when we complain about different people in our lives, whether it be in-laws, whether it be friends that are passive aggressive, that don't take responsibility. We've got co-parents out there that are not very healthy. And if we are divorced from these people, sometimes they give us a really hard time. People tell me about their spouses that don't share with them on an emotional perspective, and what happens is we get ourselves stuck. So all of these things, it creates anger or angst or unhappiness or other emotions, and we get triggered by it. So then we fall into blame and judgment and land in our victim seat, which all these things are coming from that adolescent chair. Not the emotions, but the blame and the judgment and the triggers are all sitting in that adolescent chair. So when we have people in our lives, we're not happy with their behavior or their actions or who they are, then this is what happens. We get angry and then we tell so-and-so about it. And again, it keeps us really stuck. And what I call, it moves us over to Suffering Island. I actually demoed this in the workshop. When we have someone in our lives that really, really ticks us off, let's just say, for example, a boss, or if you're divorced and you've got, your ex whomever that doesn't pick up the child on time when it's their weekend or their day, we get upset. And then we tell our friends and our family, and then we tell stories and assumptions about it. And we might say things like, it's always going to be like this. They're never going to change. My child's going to be so affected by this. They're going to turn out like this, or they're going to turn out like that. And we go on and on and on about what's going to happen because this person shows up late, or because this person can't take responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. Here's the problem is someone else's behavior outside of us is landing us on Suffering Island. So the way to get off Suffering Island is, I'll let you guess, acceptance of that person. Now, here's the thing. I didn't ever say you had to like that person. I didn't say you had to become friends with that person. I didn't say anything about that. What we need to do to get off Suffering Island is first, that gets us one foot off of Suffering Island, is to start talking about, instead of storing an assumption about this other person, and let's just use that example of the person that doesn't pick their kid up on time every week or every other week or whatever it is. What we want to do is just say, okay, this person, my ex, does not pick up my child every week on time, period. There's truth. Fact or truth, that's putting us in our adult chair. What else is true? I'm upset about it. Okay, that's true. Own that. That's fine. What else is true? Well, my son doesn't even seem to notice, but sometimes he gets upset about it. Okay, there's another truth. So these are all truths that start to move us off of Suffering Island. Okay, so what else is true? Well, that's about it. So the story would be, well, my son's going to suffer. My son's not going to know who his father is, and blah, blah. That's a story or an assumption. But this what I'm talking to you about is, these are facts. Okay? Very, very, very different. So after we have all of our facts and our truth together, we then want to look at the ex-husband that's creating all of this angst within us, all of this unsettledness within us, that's kicking us into stories and assumptions in our adolescent chair. So now that we're in our adult chair, after we've reached for the facts and the truth, now we can look at that guy and say, okay, those are all the facts and truth about this person. Can we just accept him for who he is? Which would be something like, so he's late. He shows up late every weekend. Okay. So accept that about him. So don't think that he's ever going to show up early because he's just late all the time. Okay. Can you just accept him for who he is? I didn't say again, you had to like him. I didn't say again, not to set a boundary, but just, can you accept him for who he is? Because you know what? It stops and busts all those stories. You won't expect him then to show up early. It's like, okay, he is who he is. It's over. It's over. And it keeps you in your adult chair. It actually takes the drama right out of it. And it's kind of boring without drama, because then you have nobody to tell if he's late by an hour. You've just accepted him for who he is. And the drama's done. Done. And if your son walks up and says, "Where's dad?" You very, very factually state, "Well, dad's late. He's typically late. He should probably be here in the next couple hours." Now, I want to bring this up because when we've accepted it, we say it from our adult chair, and it's very, very factual. We can say the same statement from the adolescent chair, and it becomes a judgment and starts to stir up the drama pot. Okay? So if I say, if my son comes up to me and says, "Where's dad? He was supposed to be here at 2:00 today." And I say, "Well, he's usually late, and I'm guessing he'll be here by 4. So just hang tight." It's very drama-free. It's factual. That's the adult. Okay? Because that's a true statement. Now, drama back in the adolescent chair would be, "Well, your father, he's always late. He's late every damn weekend. So I don't know what to tell you. I guess you can text him or something, but he's not going to answer and he's still going to be late." So it's like we get to choose, and we can use the same statement in each chair, but the energy is very different in the adult. It's rock solid and it's truth. And that happens when we accept people for who they are. So something that really helps us is when we are able to, this is a key to this, is drop the expectations and instead have preferences. So if we use this guy as an example, I prefer that my ex shows up on time. However, he's typically late. Okay. But when I expect him to show up at 2:00 and he never shows up at 2:00, and then every weekend, because my expectations are 2:00, guess who gets let down? I do. I'm going to be let down, not him. No one else is affected. I mean, my son might be affected, but I am the model. I'm the navigating source for my son. So my son looks to me. If I'm rattled, my son picks up on that. So the more solid I can be for my son and have preferences versus expectations and accept the ex-husband, the better. People all the time say, "How do I teach my kids how to live in their adult chair?" You live in your adult chair. You do it. And then your children learn how to do this because our children model us. So we want to show up on our adult chair as much as we possibly can. Okay. Now, here's something I'm not saying, which please hear me now. Don't email me. Everyone, sometimes people get rattled up by what I say. And remember, these are just suggestions that have worked for me. So sometimes people get very black and white with what I say. This is fluid. So I'm not saying to accept someone that comes to pick up my son on the weekends that's abusive toward me and that's abusive toward my son. That's a whole other story. What we want to do is accept people that just show up in our lives that are not showing up as we'd like them to. But I don't recommend accepting people that are abusing us. That's a whole different story. Okay? I would not send my son off with an abuser. I would not engage with an abuser. So totally different. I'm talking about someone that might show up late. I'm talking about somebody that might treat us in a way that's disrespectful. Someone shows up late every weekend to pick up my kid. That's disrespectful. I can accept that that's who they are and move on with my life, or I can stay stuck in it. I'm keeping myself stuck. That's the big takeaway here. Acceptance sets us free. It really does. Now, I'm just going to keep using this example. If I have, let's say, I'm going to actually use a different example. Let's just say I have a friend who has a really hard time saying I'm sorry. And she'll make mistakes, and not intentional, but she or he may make mistakes. And it's clear that an apology would be necessary or would be nice, but yet they never do. So they have a hard time taking responsibility for their lives. And saying I'm sorry is just not something that they're able to do because maybe there's shame attached. We don't need to know why. But perhaps someone in our lives just doesn't say I'm sorry or apologize or take responsibility for things. Now, we can set boundaries around that. The first thing I might do is say, hey, you know what? So-and-so, it really hurt me when you did that, and you didn't apologize. Well, that person then might or might not be able to set an apology. So of course I would set a boundary. I would set a boundary again with the other example with the ex-husband. Hey, would you please try to pick up your son at 2:00? Yes, sure. Because, I've got plans at 4 and I can't leave him home. Okay. Yeah. Whether they show up or not at 2 or 4 is another story. And going to my friend that cannot say apologies and cannot own her or his reality, I'm going to set my boundary. They may or may not be able to do it. Okay? We then have to choose, do I want them in my life or not? Do I want that person to stay in my life if they cannot own their reality and they never apologize? That's again when we go back into our adult chair and go, okay, so what do I know that's true about my friend Joe? Okay, Joe is the nicest person. Joe picks me up from the airport every time I go somewhere. Joe makes me dinner once a week. So all these lovely things that Joe does. However, when Joe makes mistakes, like forgets to do various things, for example, let's just pretend like Joe forgot to pick me up from the airport one day. Is it enough to get rid of the friendship, or do I just accept Joe for who he is? Well, that's who Joe is. He doesn't know how to say, I'm sorry. He might say something else got in the way, and I wish he could apologize, but he can't. So the question is, do I want to kick Joe out of my life, or do I want to keep Joe in my life? Because if I want to keep Joe in my life, I've got to do one thing, and that is accept him for who he is. And when I accept Joe for who he is, when he does not apologize, it does not affect me. I might wish that he might apologize, but if I can accept that Joe doesn't really own his reality that well, it's not great, it does not apologize, not only to me, but to anybody. These are all facts from the adult. I'm just going to accept him for who he is because overall, he's a really good person. And I'd like to have him in my life or to keep him in my life. Now, I feel like I need to bring up the co-parent thing again, because I have got quite a few clients that have exes that are really married to some not respectful people. They're not nice people at all. And many of my clients would report to me and think that their exes are narcissists or they have borderline personality or something like that. As you know, I'm not a huge fan of labels, but what I hear is there's clearly something going on with some of these ex-spouses or ex-girlfriends or boyfriends. So when we have someone that is really manipulative and passive aggressive and not nice, we really have to practice acceptance even more. I had a client just a couple of weeks ago and she came in and she's like, my husband is the biggest asshole. He is not nice. He is twisted. He uses me. He makes me take the kids all the time. He travels and he pretends like he doesn't remember that I texted him, that I can't take the kids on certain weekends, that he drops them off at she goes, this is one client, and I have, unfortunately, many clients that sound a lot like her. This guy, clearly, her ex does not respect her at all. And I listen to her every other week. She comes in and she really complains about her ex. And I said to her recently, I said, okay. I said, I wish I had a magic wand and I could wave it over this guy and I could just fix him and make him completely healthy, but I can't. So she has set boundaries. She has done everything that she can in her power to get him to do the right thing with her kids. And, he's one of those people that talks to the kids about her and throws her under the bus. He's awful. This one guy is really, really bad. And she comes in upset every week. And I said to her a couple of weeks ago, I said, you know what? You got two choices. I said, you can come in every other week and we can sit and talk about what an ass this guy is. And I will listen to you the whole time. And you can go on and on and on. I said, but my job is to help you to stay connected to yourself. And my job is to help you to stay in balance emotionally, mentally, physically and spiritually. That's why you're paying me. And she said, I am. I said, then it's time that you accept him. You have to accept him for who he is. I know he's a total ass, but you have to accept him for who he is. And stop expecting him to show up like any other person than who he is. And if he does, great. And by the way, if he's nice to you on a text or an email or you have a face-to-face exchange, don't buy into it unless it lasts more than 6 months. Then I'll believe that he's had some sort of crazy transformation. Because I've had many people that have come in and said, oh, I think so-and-so has changed. They're very different. And you know what? They're not changed. They're putting on a nice mask. So I said to her, you can accept him or I'll listen to you every other week talking about him. And she looked at me like, what? I don't want to accept his behavior. And she was very, very upset about the idea of accepting it. And I said, accepting it does not mean that you agree with what he's doing. It doesn't mean not to set boundaries. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It just means he is who he is. It's like you're trying to see someone else instead of who he really is. And if you can accept who he really is, you will be taken out of the drama that you have with this guy. Not to say that she'll, never have bad exchanges with this guy again. I said, but you got to pull yourself out and accept him for who he is. He's not going to show up in a different way. So when you open up an email and when you see that he's texted, you got to remember and even say a phrase to yourself like, he's an asshole. Oh, look who's emailing me. Okay. He's a total jerk. Like you go into it knowing he's a jerk. I said all this to her and I said, you're just going to go into it knowing this, but you've accepted him for who he is. Here's the thing. This guy's not going to change unless he has serious therapy or goes away for an intensive and he's not going to do that I know. Maybe he will. It'll be a miracle. But in order to help my client find balance again, we had to talk about acceptance. And again, the adolescent, there's that egoic part of us that likes to complain and wants that attention. And we want validation that we're not wrong and that this person is not showing up in the world because of me or mirroring something in me, all of these things. And I said, he is who he is. And if he's triggering you, we need to look at some triggers here, but everything can start to change the moment you accept him. And when you get a text from him, here's the adult share 1-word answers that we're going to give. Okay. Thank you. Maybe, or yes. That's it. Because he would text her every once in a while with something that was nice to get his way, of course. And then he would slam her. And she'd buy into it and text him long paragraph text. And I said, why are you buying into this crap? He's not changed. So just stop it. Get in your adult. Adults can answer like, okay, thank you, yes, no, maybe. Done. And be done with it. From our adult, we can pause and remember we have choices. In every moment, we have choices. And what we do instead, much of the time, is jump in the adolescent chair and we react immediately without even thinking. And it oftentimes hurts us in the end. So what we want to do instead is pause, take a breath, connect to fact and truth, get into the adult, remember who this person is, and we have accepted them for who they are, and then respond. I've read many, many, many posts in that adult chair closed group, and I certainly have clients like this that say they were raised by a narcissistic parent. And they are hurt by them and they're dealing with all kinds of issues in their lives now because of them. And they're wondering, how do they carry on relationships with them? And they don't know. And they're visiting and now the holidays are coming and how are they going to interact with them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the first thing I say to them is, have you accepted them for who they are? Because I find that inside of us, if we look at some of our internal parts, we're always wanting our parents' love and attention, affection. We may want validation from our parents. Even as adults, we still long for these things. I work with people that are in their 60s that are still longing for I remember actually working with someone in their mid 70s that still wanted the acceptance from her mother who was who was in her 90s. She was in her 70s. And I said to even that lady, I remember saying to her, I don't know that your mother will ever be able to do that. Can you accept that? Can you accept her the way she is? Again, I'm not saying you have to like it, but when we can accept that person, that longing that's inside of us, that longing that we want from that person, we want that person to show up in a new way. We want our mother, our father, our in-laws, our whomever to show up differently. The ex-spouses, the bosses, I don't care who it is. We want some people in our lives to show up differently. And when they don't, we get let down. But in my experience, when we can accept those people for who they are and drop the expectations that they're going to show up as anyone else but themselves, we become free. This is all about us. This is all about, as I said on that other podcast, it's all about me. Our job is to stay connected to ourselves no matter what. So if you have a parent that is passive aggressive or not nice or not kind or whatever it is, know that when you interact with them, it's going to be that way. They're not going to show up as different people. Again, maybe they've had miracle transformations and they went away and got help. Sometimes that happens. Very, very little, but sometimes it does happen. But overall, for those of you that have parents that are just passive aggressive or not kind people, remember from our adult, we have choices. And I don't care who someone is. If they're being abusive, you do not have to stay in that relationship. I don't care if it's a mother or a father or whomever. Get out. No one should tolerate abuse ever. In my opinion, I don't feel like any human being should ever be abused. And if that's happening, it's time to go. However, if you're in a relationship with somebody, like a parent, and they're passive aggressive or they're just not really respectful, or they boss you around, or they tell you what to do. When you interact with those people and you are choosing to keep them in your lives for whatever reason, when you can accept them for who they are, I just feel, at least in my experience, that we show up then with these people. The triggering is far less because we're already expecting them to be who they're going to be. If you are triggered, I would highly advise that you listen to my triggering podcast. I was just triggered and I recorded it, so it's perfect timing. I believe it's number 98. I'll put it in the show notes. I just recorded it just a few months ago. So clear out those triggers, and then when you can accept some of these people that are in your life, you will find they just don't bother us. As you know, I had an uncle, my father's identical twin, that he was terrible. It really was a very dysfunctional growing up because of him for so many reasons. And I'm sure most of you know. And I hated him. I thought about killing this guy. When I was in my teenage years, I was like, if only he weren't alive. That's how much, it was really, really bad growing up. And I remember thinking, maybe I should hire a hitman. This was after he had a huge explosion at my mom and me in our house. And I was like, God, I was at my wit's end. So I spent many years with such hatred for this man. I hated being in the same room with him. That's how much I hated him. And I can tell you that the day he died, I felt such peace, not because he died, but because I had peace with him, because I had accepted him for who he was. I didn't accept, as I got older and I started doing more and more of my work, I realized what I had to do was accept him for who he was and not expect him to show up as anyone but himself. And we had a very different relationship in his later years of life. Yes, of course, he had mellowed a little bit, but he still had a lot of that same dysfunction. And by the end of his life, I felt so much different about this guy. And it was honestly because I had just accepted him for who he was. And that was it. I did it for me, not for him. I did it for me. So I could stay in balance. every time I was interacting with him. But boundaries are huge. Speaking of that, if you have someone in your life that is uncomfortable to be with, when you accept that person, remember from our adult, we can use boundaries, meaning I can limit the time that I'm with that person. Maybe I only want to be with that person for an hour. Maybe I want to only spend Thanksgiving Day with that person or Christmas Day or whatever holiday. I'm just going to spend one day and then I'm out. Great. And know when you walk in the door to spend that whatever holiday or birthday with that person, expect them to show up like they always have and accept them for who they are. And again, if they show up in a different way and they're kind and friendly, then what a surprise, and it's lovely. But we're just going to know that they are going to show up as they typically have been, but I've already accepted them, so it takes a lot of that angst away. I want you to know that when you are able to accept someone for who they are, it leads to transformation. And this is another reason why people get stuck and they don't want to accept people for who they are, because on the other end of acceptance, we find transformation, meaning your whole life could change. Now, it might be an internal change where you just have more peace when you're with that person because you don't expect them to show up in any other way than as they are. But also, your life may transform. I was recently working with someone, and she has a husband that is not interested in intimacy and has not been interested in many, many years. They have many children and they have a great marriage, but no intimacy, or a great marriage from that perspective. And that, they have a roof over their head, they make good money, they talk, they have some fun. What's missing is intimacy and an emotional bond. So they don't feel safe with each other. And my client works with me all the time to, she's looking for ideas on how to improve the marriage and how to improve her husband. And she's not sure how to do that because she wants to gain that closeness, but her husband is just a little bit distant when it comes to, or not a little bit, but a lot when it comes to intimacy and when it comes to anything sexually speaking, or when she talks about anything emotional. Otherwise, he's a wonderful man. They've been married almost 20 years now. So this has been going on for at least 10 years, I believe. So everything's great except for these two items. And they're really important to her, and he won't talk about them. So she's getting all this work from me. And finally, she came to the conclusion about a month or two ago. She said, I realized something. I've been trying to fix and change and get my marriage straightened out. She says, with no help from him. I said, oh, okay. And she said, I think I need to accept who he is, that it's not going to change. As many times as I asked, because I said to her, you are the one that's doing all the work here. I don't see him coming in. He doesn't want to come in. I don't see him making a shift. I said, at some point, you either have to accept how things are or move on. It's our choice. You have a choice. And she thought about that for a while. And then she came back and she said, the next week she came back and she said, oh my God. She says, I've thought about what you said. And she says, can I report in from the chairs? It was really cool to watch her. And I said, of course. And she said, I really want to show you where I've been. And she sat in the adolescent chair, right in that middle chair. And she says, I want him to change. I'm going to do different things in the marriage. I feel broken because he won't be intimate with me. There's something wrong with me because he's not more emotional. And she said, as she sat in the middle chair, in the adolescent chair, she said, I felt so much like it was my fault. And I had a lot of blame of myself. And then she said, but what I'm realizing is, and then she moved, and she said a few more things. And then she moved over to her adult chair and she closed her eyes and she took a moment. And she had her feet on the ground and she slowed everything down. And I said, so what do you know that's true now? And she said, she opened her eyes and she goes, I've been doing all the work. So even though I'd been saying this to her, she was getting it clearly. She, again, we can say things to people. This is why truly, we have to live chin down. So she says, I've been doing all the work. And I'd said that to her. She goes, but I got it below the chin. She says, it penetrated below my chin, out of the mind into the body. And she goes, and when I feel that, I realize I don't want to accept things the way they are in my marriage. And she said, and I realize I think I want to leave. And I said, oh, okay. She says, but I'm yet afraid and I don't know. And I said, okay. I said, this is fine. I said, what's your truth though about all of this? She said that it's not been my fault. She says, he won't communicate with me. That's true. He doesn't want to be intimate. That's true. And he is very distant with me, emotionally and intimately. And I've tried everything I possibly can, and he just doesn't want to go there, and it's okay. I said, wow. She says, I really accepted where we are. I get it. But what I also know that's true is I just don't think I want to do this anymore. And I said, awesome. I said, let's sit with that now. And I had her sit there in the adult chair and just kind of took it all in. But she then started saying, but oh my God, I don't know how I'll do this. I don't know how I can afford to do this. And she started going through story. She moved. I could feel her energy start to speed up. She went right into story and assumption. And she said, I don't know how he's going to take this and and he's probably going to be upset. And I said, whoa. You are so far in the future. We don't even know what's going to happen. I said, the first thing that had to happen was that you accepted everything as it is. And you'd been avoiding even accepting it. And she said, you're right. I don't want to accept it. But she said, actually, I do accept how everything is, but I don't like it. Things need to change. And I can't do it on my own. So it was really cool. But a lot happened when she accepted everything the way it was and really took it in. Like, I accept that my husband is not going to be intimate with me. I've tried everything I could, and I accept that my husband is just not emotional, and he never has been, and maybe he never will be. I don't know, but I accept that, but I don't like it, and I don't want this anymore. So I said, let's see what happens. Let's see what transforms now that you've had this big shift. When we take in these new truths like she did, our whole energy field shifts and new ideas, thoughts, and beliefs start to emerge. So I said, let's see how this plays out. Who knows? He may now want to go to marriage counseling. He may now want to talk to you if you say you want to leave. I've seen that happen many times. The idea of a spouse or a partner or a loved one leaving causes the other person to drop into their emotional body. So you just don't know what's going to happen. I said, let's stay present and let's see how this whole thing plays out. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch in the chairs. The last thing I want to talk about is acceptance with children. We have to accept who our children are. And I know I've talked about this probably on another podcast or two, but this is hard for parents. We really want our kids to turn out as we think they should. Instead of, I'm sure you've heard me, maybe not, I've heard me talk about boundaries as guardrails. And as parents, our job is to be guardrails for our children. What I mean by that is when they're little babies, it's like these little babies are going down a 1-lane freeway or highway, and we are the guardrails on that one lane. And then when there are when they're somewhere between 3 years old and 5 years old or 6 years old, they're on a 2-lane highway. And we are still the boundaries. We're the guardrails. We want to let them explore a little bit more, but we're going to give them a little bit more freedom. And it goes on and on until they're about 18. And then by the time they're 18, they're on an 8-lane expressway when we are still the guardrails. But that's just it. We are the guardrails. And I see many, many, many parents that want to keep their little babies as they grow up on a 1-lane expressway. And we have to stop that. That does not help our children. It is based in fear that we do that we have so much we have many tight reins or control with these kids, and we think we know best for them and we don't let them explore. That means we're not accepting them for who they are. Accept them. I have had clients that they have a really hard time because their kids are, for example, I've used this before. There's one client that comes to mind. Her husband was a football player and her son was giant size like her husband, like 6 something. And he wanted to be an artist. And the father wanted him to play football. And the son had a very hard time with the judgment coming down from the father. And, it was hard. And the mother was caught in the middle. And that's the father not accepting who that kid is. And I have many parents that come in with their kids that might have something like ADHD or Asperger's or whatever is going on with these kids. And they will not accept it. And when they do accept their kids for who they are set free. And it feels like a weight's come off of them. But, we think we see what our kids need to do with their lives. We pressure them for great grades or whatever your thing is as a parent. And I'm not saying you specifically are doing that, but many of us do this. And that's not accepting our kids for who they are. I also have clients where their children are feeling like they might be homosexual and they have a very hard time accepting this. Some people, not all people. And you know what? We have to have the guardrails with our kids and just honor where they are on their life path. And if that's who they are, then that's who they are. And it's our job to accept them no matter what or who they are. That's our job. Again, it sets us free. I know with my own child, he's a phenomenal soccer player. He's just gifted with sports in general, but with soccer, he's very, very talented. And we've heard it his entire life. He started playing him when he was 3. And my dream, and probably my husband's too, was always that he will get a full ride scholarship to some college because of his soccer skills. And he was absolutely on track to do that. And he always wanted to do that. And then as he got a little bit older and in high school, he started saying, I don't want to play on the top travel team anymore because I want to go out with my friends on the weekends. And I'll tell you what, I wanted to bring those guardrails into about 2 lanes and say, hell no, you're not. You're going to go play on travel soccer and be gone every weekend and play with these kids because you're going to get that soccer scholarship. And it was really hard to honor him, even though he was so talented, and to say, okay, because I'll tell you what, I wanted, like my husband wanted this kid to play soccer because he's that good. And he doesn't want to. He does not want to play in college. So I had to accept him. And it's hard sometimes. It still is hard. He's a senior in high school. When I hear people on the sidelines talk about, who's that kid? He's so good. I'm like, oh my God, that's my son. It still gets in my helmet a little bit. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to accept that he's not going to do college or do soccer in college, but I'd have. So it's hard. It's really hard as a parent to watch our kids do things and accept them for who they are, but they have their own souls inside and they are here for a reason and a purpose and they have a plan and we've got to honor that plan just like we have a plan. So that's why once they're 18, they've got at least 6 or 8 lanes on that expressway and we've got to let them go back and forth all over those lanes. And we are there as bumpers or the guardrails. And as they get older, they get wider and wider until they're just gone. So at any rate, that is about accepting children. It's hard, but it's very, very necessary for us as parents to really accept kids for who they are. All right, so I've got some final points about acceptance. I want to remind you, acceptance is not failure or agreement, okay? It doesn't mean that you failed and that's why you have to accept, like you're succumbing and you're going to now have to accept. No. And it certainly is not an agreement, okay? It's something that we do for ourselves to set us free. You don't have to like or agree with the things that you're accepting. You don't have to like it. I don't like that my son is not going to college to play soccer. I don't have to like that. I hate that, but I accept it. And when I accept it, it sets me free. It feels like internally to me, like I've been taken off this hook. Like I don't get the knots in my stomach anymore. Now I'm not going to lie. Sometimes on the sidelines, when I hear people, because he still plays, he just doesn't play travel, but I still hear people say things about who's that kid, and I sit there and I go, oh God, it's my kid. And then I go, oh, but he's not going to play and it's okay. Moving on. Okay. I think I brought this up before, but my husband does not like talking about finances. It drove me crazy for many, many years. And I tried to get him to talk about finances and bills and budgeting and all these things and future and investing. He doesn't like to. It doesn't matter why. I've asked. It doesn't matter. He doesn't even know why. But what I realized, I remember the day when I sat there and I thought, you know what? I've got to accept him for who he is. He doesn't like talking about finances or doing finances. I'll take care of all of it. Okay. And I just accepted it. And I stopped banging my head against the wall every time that he wouldn't do something and getting mad and getting angry and all this crap. It's like I just decided to accept him for who he was and let it go. I'm done with it. I don't ask him anymore about it. It's just something I just don't do. I didn't give up. I accepted him for who he was and made another choice. That's the key. Accept people for who they are and make another choice. Okay, so if even thinking about accepting someone or something is triggering you, don't forget, go to number 98, Transforming Our Triggers podcast. Again, I'll put it in the show notes, but that's a great one because if someone outside of you is triggering you, remember, it's them reflecting something within you that's trying to show you. So a trigger is just it's an unconscious shadow belief within ourselves that's coming up. It just wants attention. So I explained to you exactly what to do with the trigger in that podcast. Number 98, Transforming Our Triggers. So when our job is to clear out our own triggers, because let me tell you, we will never be able to change everybody or everything around us in order to not be triggered. It's impossible, but we can go inside and work on ourselves and then accept whatever it is, that thing or that person that needs acceptance. For us, remember, this is for you. Acceptance is just for us. It's not for the other person. So lastly, the title speaks such truth, the power of acceptance. You know that when we're not accepting people or not accepting things, we actually are dropping our power or we're giving our power away to someone or something else. So think about, a lot of us complain about things like, for example, if there was a community being built next door to me, and right now it's a beautiful park with trees. And if I found out that a builder was coming in to knock down all the trees and put homes in, I'd be furious. I want my trees. So I'd go to town hall or wherever you need to go to figure out how to block this builder from coming in. And then in the end, if the builder was still coming in and my whole park and all the trees were going to be ruined, I wouldn't like that. You guys know how much I love nature and love my trees. I'd be really upset about it. However, at some point, I would just have to accept it. Because when we're really upset about it, what we do is we go and talk to neighbors and we're going to call people and say, can you believe this neighborhood's going in and it's going to be so awful and blah, 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 blah. It's going to be loud and all these the wildlife, like we keep the drama going. And what we're doing is we're giving our power away when we do that. Because let's face it, we feel powerless to the builder. The way to hold on to your power is to accept the very thing that's making you upset. So the neighborhood's going in, I got to accept this, and I'm moving on. I'm stepping out of the drama. I'm stepping off of Suffering Island. So there's great, great power here in accepting whatever's happening in your life that you don't want to accept or that's bringing you angst. Your life and how you show up in it can change with acceptance. So when we make that decision to accept something, we are owning our power. Own your power and accept the very thing that is holding you back from living your amazing life. Well, that was a great episode. I really enjoyed that. And I just really enjoyed some of the examples that came through because sometimes I have no idea what I'm going to say and it just came through. And I really enjoyed this episode today. So thank you all for listening. And of course, I loved spending this time with you today. I appreciate that. I appreciate you spending the time with me. Don't forget, we've got the journaling challenge happening. We've got the workshop with $100 off right now. And of course, I would love for you to share the show and leave a comment on my website at theadultchair.com. Go to the podcast page and just leave a review of this podcast. I would be so, so grateful. You would make my birthday. And I think I told you, I read all of them. So be nice. Leave me a 5-star review, please. Okay, well, I will chat with you guys next week. I have a great book idea for you in a moment. But for today, enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you seated next week right here firmly in the adult chair. Okay, here is this author I absolutely love, and I'm sure many of you know her. Her name's Tara Brach. She is the author of the Audible book for you today. And of course, for listeners of the Adult Chair, Audible is offering a free audiobook. You know I love free. Just go to www.audibletrial.com/theadultchair, and you are able to get this book by Tara Brach for free. The name of the book is Acceptance. The name of the book is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. For those of you that do not know her, she's amazing. I love her. A fabulous meditation teacher too. So go get that book for free at www.audibletrial.com/theadultchair. And I will see you all next week, seated firmly right here in the adult chair. Have a great week, everybody.